You're listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk.
Number 363.
Hello and welcome back to the Outdoor Station with me, your host, Bob Cartwright. The Camino de Santiago is a 500-mile pilgrimage trail through northern Spain, which has been walked by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people for hundreds of years. In September 2013, two of those people were Jill and Peter Callaghan, and in part one you heard about the walk, the weather and their reasons for doing it. Let's now pick up the story and hear more about the characters, the practicalities and costs, and what it felt like to arrive at their final destination. You started touching on something there, Jill. Some of the people you met on the route, I mean, it is... The walk is what it is, a pilgrimage, and I'm sure lots of people do it for lots of different reasons. But some of the characters you were telling me about that you've met, different age ranges, different countries, different approaches to things. Let's spend a few minutes just talking about some of the people that really impressed their character upon you.
Yeah, it was amazing to meet all those different people. I mean, one of the people that we met early on was a lady from Sweden who was 72 years old and had just been widowed the previous year and wanted to do something different. And she was amazing. I mean, she was walking about 20 kilometres a day, 25 kilometres a day at the beginning, carrying kit that was probably 10, 15 years old. But she was just so determined and so lovely. And then we met an American lady who had never walked before and had seen the film The Way and just decided, that would be a fantastic thing to do. We only met her twice, but she had come with everything in her bag and ended up shipping half of it home because she realised that she couldn't carry it. But she was still determined to carry on.
Yeah, there was a Russian guy impressed me, a guy called Yuri. He was an ex-submarine or submariner, obviously from Russia, and he'd got plenty of time off because his wife and her sister ran a company for him, and he was taking months to do this walk. But two things impressed me about him. One was that he was unflappable. He would walk reasonably slowly. He would take siesta in the middle of the day, and he didn't care what time he came in the evening, and he would find a bed. And I said, well, what happens if you don't find a bed? If I don't find a bed, I sleep in the forest. And he would, and he may have done, we don't know. We saw him over a period of about 4 days. But his knowledge of the architecture of the churches and the history of the area was absolutely fabulous, and we spent 2 or 3 evenings with him and meals with him talking about the churches to go and see, and the tombs and the style of architecture, and he explained the difference between Romanesque and Gothic and how you can date the age of the church, and I think that was quite a fantastic experience for me.
What sort of age range of people were you meeting?
Complete age range. I mean, there were a couple of American girls that we met who'd just finished college, so they were 21, and they decided that they'd do this as a finish off to their college time. We met people in their 70s. We didn't actually meet him, but met some people who'd met a 93-year-old who was going on his last adventure. So, yeah, a whole range of people. And generally,
was everybody friendly to each other? Were they supportive, accommodating?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We met some Italians, Lorenzo and Wanda and Michaela. They were fabulous. It was his birthday on one of the days, and so we had a birthday party for him in one of the albergues. And that's one of the things that we haven't touched on is in the refugio or albergue, as they call them, when you have communal eating in a lot of them. So there are 20 or 30 people around the table, and you get given a pilgrim's meal, which has got 3 parts. You have the starter, which is either a soup or a rice-based or a carbohydrate, which is really quite odd. And then you have the main meal, which is protein, either fish or pork. We talked about that. You can't get away from eating pork. There's pork in everything. There's either ham or pork in everything that you get. And then you have a postre and after, which is usually flan, which is like a creme caramel, or you get an ice cream or something like that. But it's very nutritious, and they do fill you up. Oh, and you get free wine with it as well. The water is more expensive than the wine over there at some part. There is one bit, actually, where you walk past a wine merchant or a wine factory, and there's a tap on beside the gate, and you can help yourself to as much wine as you like as you go past.
There's a picnic spot if I've ever heard one.
Well, at 8 o'clock in the morning, it was quite interesting drinking half a pint of wine. It was the best breakfast I'd had for a while.
So the accommodation then, are they very, very similar? I mean, just give us a bit of a view. And also, for people that might be interested in doing something like this, that perhaps want to camp or take it a bit simpler, is that possible? And so touch on that afterwards. But what about the accommodation generally? You stayed a whole variety of places, I guess.
Yes, we did. We aimed first of all at the refugios or albergues, which are run by either charities or churches, and they are very, very varied. I mean, but offering dormitory type accommodation, mixed sex dormitory accommodation as well. Some quite modern, like in Roncesvalles by the monastery. There's with all mod cons. Some with rooms with sleeping 60 people in one room, which is quite a challenge. Earplugs are a necessity. Some offering accommodation that's only got 4 in a room. And some of them do offer, for an extra price you can pay to have a room of your own. But the albergues generally charge between €5 and €8 for a bed. Generally provide sheets, sometimes blankets, and always somewhere that you can wash your clothes and cook food yourself.
And the meal you mentioned, is that a set price throughout the whole trip?
That varied between about €8 and €13, I think.
Right.
Through them.
But some albergues, they do provide food, and some that they don't. You have to be very careful about that, because if you're in a refugio which has got 100 people, it's very unlikely that they'll provide food, and that's where the guides give a good indication of whether they provide food or not. There's smaller albergues are more likely to provide the food, and they have hospitalarios, or they call them. They're sort of they welcome you into the albergues, and they are fantastic people, because they've seen everybody at their worst state, at the end of a long hard day, and they're desperate for a bed and tetchy and tired, and they treat you with a smile, and they're always comforting and calming. And one of the places we went into, we were greeted with a glass of wine and that ubiquitous ham sandwich, which was quite nice. So the albergues are varied. There are some private albergues as well.
The home of UK-based audio and video podcasts for lovers of the great outdoors everywhere. If you have any feedback, questions or suggestions, why not drop us a line directly to our email address, info@theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
The albergues, are these like an approved list of accommodation
Correct.
associated with the route?
They are, and
Yes.
we were given a list of those in St Jean de Pied.
So when you first started,
we knew where they were and what size they were.
But presumably there are sort of other pension houses or whatever, which are sort of unofficial, but they're still...
Yeah, the private ones, you've got either pensiones or you've got hostels, and then you've got hotels, and you've got 3 layers of prices. So the hostel is like a private run albergue. You've got private albergues that are round about €10 per bed. Then you've got hotels, 2-star, 3-star, and you can get rooms in there for about €25 to €30 euros if you want to pay that amount of money. And then, of course, you can go into the Parador if you want to when you get there in Lyon, but that's 250 quid a night.
Right.
So it's...
And coming on to the campsites, what are the options if you chose to camp? Did you see any?
Well, there were a few campsites, though not on a regular basis. I think it might have been hard to do that night after night, but certainly some of the bigger towns had areas where there was a campsite. We didn't meet anybody who was camping, and in fact in the guides it says it's hardly worth it for the price that you're paying for a bed.
And coming on to money, what sort of budget did you give yourself to do it with on a daily basis?
Well, we budgeted, we said we were going to do €100 a day, and that included all foods and anything we bought for lunches, and we came in underneath that budget. So for 31 days, we had a look at the books last night, and we think we've come in under £3,000 for the 30 days.
But that did include the travelling there and travelling back. I mean, generally, I think if you stay in a refugio and have a meal, a pilgrim's meal, you can probably manage for €25 a day a person.
But I think then you've got to think about the lunch food that you've got to buy as well, because there's always the pint of beer and the little tapas bar at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we always forget those ones. Beer's a variable price. A large beer will cost you anything between €1.50 and €3.50, depending on what part of the route you're on. Some places they will give you a plate of food, and the food is either a piece of bread with some ham or the potato.
Potato tortilla, which is the option for vegetarians, the only option for vegetarians.
Yeah, if you go in a tapas bar, you can either have a tortilla or you can have some grilled peppers, and that's basically it, because everything else on the menu includes, it's either fish or meat.
But all the albergues did provide a small kitchen area, so if you wanted to...
And was that sort of just like a burner, or was it like a full cooker, and, could you get, like a youth hostel, could you get 10 or 15
hostel.
people in there cooking sort of thing?
Absolutely.
Yes,
oh, right. So you could pick stuff up and
you could, yes.
keep costs down that way.
Yeah, and I mean, the cost of food in the shops was very cheap.
So before we actually come on to talk about equipment, because I think we'll just touch on that a bit, let's just talk about the emotional. Are you pleased that you've done it? Is it been an emotional walk that actually has been more than you thought it would have been as an overall, when you look back at it in retrospect?
I think it was a bigger challenge physically than we thought it would be. I'm very, very pleased with the fact that we've done it.
Would you describe it as tough? Or is it a tough walk?
I think it's tough. I mean, some of the toughness is to do with the length of time, and some of the toughness, I think, is to do with the terrain and what's going on underneath your feet. I mean, for me, there were a few descents that were absolutely hideous, that made me quite shaky. I don't like coming downhill. My knees don't like coming downhill. But yeah, delighted to have done it. I don't think we'll ever do a walk that's that long again.
Well, for me, looking back at it, I think I was pleased that we made the right decisions at the right time. I was pleased that we actually did attempt the walk and that we finished it the way in which we wanted to finish it. One of the things that I found is that I'm a bit calmer now than I started. So I think that's a good lesson for me, because I was a little bit competitive at the beginning, and this Spanish word tranquilo, and being calm, has actually come home a bit to roost for me. And so I think that's been very good for me. One of the things that people have got to realise is that it's not just walking. This consumes your day. It becomes a job. You're there in the morning, what are you doing? You're getting up, you're getting dressed, you're packing your rucksack, you're making sure you've got enough water, you've got your food, you haven't left anything behind, you've got your map and you know where you're going. Then you do your walk, and you go through those physical emotional changes that we've talked about, and you get to the other end, And what do you then do? You unpack, you take your stuff off, you wash your stuff out, you put it on the line to dry, you sort your feet out, you put your boots outside, and then you start refueling the engine. You know, you get some food and you talk to the people, and it's all about the Camino. It's all about the walk. There's very little else discussion, really. You know, a little bit about personal lives, about have you got children or whatever, but it's mostly about the Camino. Then you rest, and most times you're in bed at 9:30 and lights out at 10 o'clock, and then away you go again the following morning.
And I think that was also one of the challenges for me, is to live in such close proximity to other people.
Yeah, you've mentioned, you've sort of said that a few times.
It's
when you mention the dormitories, that's obviously the challenge.
Yes, it is when you're used to your own personal space. And I mean, some of them were very close together. We stayed in one refugio where they actually had put the bunk beds touching each other.
Great.
And we were all right because we were both on a top bunk with the bunks touching each other. But this one American lad came out to speak to the hospitalier and say, I can't possibly sleep next to a woman I don't know. But they don't seem to think anything about that in Spain. I think perhaps it's a British and American hang-up.
One of the things that they didn't really touch on yet, and if we talk about the film The Way, they didn't really touch on the film The Way. It's something that will stay with me forever, is the night sounds. Because when you're in community sleeping and then somebody starts to snore about 10:15, there are still people up reading their Kindles and iPads and whatever that they're doing, and then they start making noises to wake that person up, so they stop snoring, which is even more irritating than the snoring, to be honest. And then after a while, you get tired and everybody goes to sleep. But then it's at 5:30. The first person gets up and you can hear the shuffling. Then there's the sound of the toilets flushing. Then there's the sound of people moving around, and it's like, you know, mad hamsters packing their bags away in the dark, and there's lights flashing, and we're all really sort of half awake, but they won't put the light on because it's not 6 o'clock yet. And then you have the boots tramping from above or down the corridor, and the first wave of peregrinos, as they call them, are on their way on the Camino. And then there's a bit of a lull until you get the second phase that want to leave at sort of normal time between 7 and 8 o'clock. And then the lights go on and it's a little less frantic then. And then the second wave goes.
But that's the way that sort of lifestyle is, isn't it? If you're committing, you're focused on that one particular task and that daily thing, as you quite rightly pointed out, then that's the lifestyle that you lead, and I guess that's what you just have to accept. Tell me about the last couple of days. You know, actually, when you arrived, that must have been quite an emotional sort of wave coming over you.
Yes, I mean, it's just a glorious feeling coming into Santiago, although I had this vision of a cathedral on a hill that you could see for kilometres out, but it didn't turn out like that. It was hidden inside town, but it was just lovely to walk in and arrive and touch your hand on the cathedral door, and then walk round to the Camino office where you were given your Compostela, and to meet other people who had just finished the walk that day as well. And then after that we went into the cathedral, and at midday every day they have a pilgrim's mass. So there were loads of people wandering around in their backpacks, some of them steaming, some of them arrived the day before. And there's this wonderful experience of all being together again, I think.
Find out how easy it is to subscribe to all our free programmes. Visit our website at theoutdoorstation.co.uk or look us up on Facebook.
It must be very calming, actually, and very cool in there as well, I should imagine. Just the whole sort of slow wind down and sort of a celebration that you've completed it, I guess.
There was a bit of excitement as well because they have a big incense burner that every now and again they swing, and this thing is enormous and it reaches the roof.
Gosh.
And that's quite exciting. And when they started to swing the incense burner on the day that we were there, people were getting their cameras out and taking pictures of that. And that was quite exciting, and everybody finds that as part of the experience as well, because that's a well-known tradition in that major church in Santiago. We met a guy there, Richard, who we'd met along the way, talking about stories and people. Richard is a walker, and he joined at Burgos, I think, and we stayed in one of the hostels where the noise of the snoring was so loud that he had to pick all his bedding up and go downstairs and sleep on a sofa in the reception area downstairs. And he said it was some kind of Olympic snoring team. He said, I couldn't put up with it anymore, which was quite funny.
So, finally then, equipment. You carried everything yourself. Obviously, there was nobody shipping your equipment for you, so you had your own rucksacks with that. So I understand there's probably people that do move things. Is there somebody doing that?
Yes, we did.
Taxi service?
We did actually meet somebody from England who had the whole trip arranged with things being transported. But if you need to transport your bag, there's a service for €7 a trip, which would move it on to the next place for you.
That's worth knowing. Knowing.
So if you've got an injury and you can't carry it for some reason, that's a useful service to know about. And they ship it to a central point in town, and then you can collect it from there.
It's about €1 a kilometre for taxi for you and your bag. That's if you want to do that. Trains and buses are about 10 cents a kilometre. So that gives you an idea as to how much it costs you. I mean, for example, one of the train trips we were on was an hour and a half, and it only cost €6. Right. So it's a lot cheaper. It's about a quarter of the price of train journeys or bus journeys or taxi journeys in Britain. So that's a useful thing to know.
Coming back to the equipment then, just a brief, obviously I'm doing great detail, but just a brief overview of what you took and what you would advise people to consider, the mistakes you made, obviously.
A good fitting backpack, essential. It's nice to be comfortable. Be really strict with your clothes, I think. One thing that we didn't have, which lots of people on the continent seem to walk with, is a poncho rather than having trousers and a jacket for the wet weather. And they're incredibly light.
Humidity, I presume, there was a reason for that,
yes,
really.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you see people walking with umbrellas? Many sun umbrellas at all?
Only one.
Yeah.
Really?
But he was doing it to raise money for charity.
Okay.
Yeah. A pole. I mean, I'm not a great fan of walking with two poles. I saw lots of people with one, but I think you do need a stick as well to help with
on the ascents and descents,
particularly on the descents.
Did you find you were just wearing a wind shirt and a t-shirt, or was it just
for the first 3 weeks when the weather was really good? All I had on was a t-shirt and the wind shirt every morning, which I needed to wear for about an hour and then take off, and that was great because it gave you a bit more protection, but was nice and light. And then sometimes in the evening you'd need to put the wind shirt back on again if it was when you went out for a meal. But I think we just probably need to realise that you don't need 4 sets of clothes, that 2 sets of clothes are enough to manage with.
I take it the people who were sort of doing it and being comfortable literally were doing that, were they?
Yeah, for me, what I would do is, with the lightweight rucksack that I bought for the journey, that was fantastic. The wind shirt was superb because it was useful in the end of the day as well. Sometimes it wasn't always 30 degrees. There were times when it was cooler, particularly in Galicia. And, wearing that so lightweight, it was fantastic. I would have 2 sets of clothes, one on and one clean in the bag. 2 sets of socks. The thing that I would do is review the kind of footwear that you would wear, because it's a different terrain over there. It's tarmac, grit, concrete, footpath type thing, where they have actually repaved certain areas of it with using boulders and stones, and then there's a little bit of boulder work as well down some of the river sections or ravine sections that you come down. I wouldn't take a tent at all, not even thinking about the lightweight tents, because some of those are still 0.8 of a kilogram. because I don't think it's necessary. You can actually in hostels and albergues get away with not using just taking a liner, either a silk liner.
Sleeping bag?
Sleeping bag, I don't think it would be necessary at all.
I think we did take sleeping bags, but I think we probably used them about 5 times on the whole trip, because the liner with a provided blanket was fine.
And I understand you had sort of your leather footwear to initially cause you a few problems. You changed to approach shoes.
Yes, and then I bought some trainers when we got to Pamplona. And then I was fine with the combination of the training shoes and the approach shoes, because there's very few areas where you have to have that huge ankle support. In actual fact, I found them really quite annoying, my boots, because they didn't let my feet breathe as well as the more modern boot does.
Did you use walking poles yourself?
I bought a Pilgrim's or a Peregrino stick in Santiago. In Saint Jean at the start of it, and I used that when we were doing some of the ascents, like particularly up to a place called Osabririo, which was a bit of a brutal day. That was a climb of 800 metres in 8 kilometres. And that was at the end of the walking day, so that was coming up between 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Gosh.
That was interesting.
It was a fabulous walk, actually.
Beautiful.
And the scenery there was stunning. It was, and then you came across this old village that had some Celtic round huts that were thatched. It was a magical walk that day, or the end of it was that it had started off tramping along beside motorways, but it finished beautifully.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming in. It's been obviously you've had a magical experience from what you were saying. You've got very fond memories from it, and I can see you're both very happy that you've undertaken it. Obviously, I'm sure you'll have future walks planned in your head now. You've talked about them for 30-odd days. What shall we do next after you've completed that one? But the final question is always a little bit of a low ball, but it's a fun one to ask. Of all the things I could have asked you, what should I have asked you?
I really don't think there's anything else that is sort of in my mind that I'm burning to share. So no, I think you've asked everything. I mean, maybe the question is, which is the walk we're going to do next? Well,
yeah, okay, let's go on to that one.
Well,
what do you think?
I think the South Downs Way. I think that's what this was sort of in preparation for. Would you believe that we said when we talked and we did the coast to coast, we'd had our baggage shipped on and we wore day sacks. And as Jill said, her plan was to see if she could carry everything that you needed. And didn't have to have anything shipped on. So that was a big tick in her box. So we now know that we can carry everything that we need. And so things like the South Downs Way will be far more affordable for us because we won't have to have the stuff shipped forward. So that was the next question, as to where we're going to move on to and what sort of length of walks we're going to do. I think 2 weeks is going to be something that we will have as a maximum for us at the moment, the South Downs Way. But we've been advised as well on other beautiful walks, like around Mont Blanc apparently is a 12-day walk, which is something that we're going to consider.
Well, whatever you choose to do, it's been fascinating hearing all the details of this one. I would love you to come back and share it with us.
That's fine. Thank you very much indeed for inviting us in.
My thanks once again to Jill and Peter for taking the time to share their story, and as you hear, this experience has whetted their appetite for more. Please feel free to give us your feedback at the outdoorstation.co.uk website, or mail me directly at info@theoutdoorstation.co.uk. Thanks for joining us, and I can assure you there are many more podcasts coming very, very soon. Until next time, folks, take care and bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear more from our extensive free library, please visit the website at theoutdoorstation.co.uk, the home of UK-based audio and video podcasts for outdoors people everywhere.